Welcome back, dear friends, to Exploring the Advent of Divine Justice. We are on part 16, part 2, covering paragraphs 59 through 62. And without any further ado, as we are in this wonderful celebration of Resvan, I am going to be sharing with you an extract from Bahia Khanum, and then we'll be having a prayer of healing. The festival of Resvan is come, and the splendor of the light of God is shining from the invisible horizon of his mercy. The overflowing grace of the Lord of oneness is pouring down copiously from the unseen world, and the glad tidings of the kingdom are coming in from all countries. The resplendent morn that betokens the advancement of the cause of God and heralds the exaltation of his word is dawning in every region. Praise be to God that the fame of the ancient beauty, may my life be offered up for his loved ones, has been noised abroad in the world, and the glory of his cause is spread far and wide throughout the East and the West. These joyous developments will indeed gladden the hearts of his loved ones.
O God, my God, I beg of thee by the ocean of thy healing, and by the splendors of the day star of thy grace, and by thy name through which thou didst subdue thy servants, and by the pervasive power of thy most exalted word, and the potency of thy most august pen, and by thy mercy that have preceded the creation of all who are in heaven and on earth, to purge me with the waters of thy bounty from every affliction and disorder, from all weakness and feebleness. Thou seest, O my Lord, thy suppliant waiting at the door of thy bounty, and him who have set his hopes on thee, clinging to the cord of thy generosity. Deny him not, I beseech thee, the things he seeketh from the ocean of thy grace and the day star of thy loving kindness. Powerful art thou to do what pleaseth thee. There is none other God save thee, the ever forgiving, the most generous. Baha'u'llah. Ya Baha'u'llah.
Well, dear friends, wonderful to see all of you this evening. And we're now going to get back into our session. So, as you recall, in our last session, we were covering paragraphs 59 through 62 of our Advent of Divine Justice. And in this book, it's found starting, paragraph 59 starts on page 61. And in this book, right here, it's found starting right here on page 34, where it starts as their double crusade. So if you're using the book, that's where paragraph 59 starts. Okay, excellent. Let me share my screen. Okay. So, as you recall, our last slide was this one. And it was a whole bunch of quotes, right? From Rumi to all of these wonderful individuals talking about the inner life of the individual. And our dear Roya Jan was explaining all these different aspects. So I'm going to let Roya Jan continue, as she was doing such an excellent job. Roya Jan, please.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Yes, as you recall, most of the material we covered last time was on the regeneration of the inner life of the individual and the community, the Baha'i community, as the first part of the double crusade, and then being prepared to then embark upon removing the ills from the society at large. And then we covered in depth about the three weapons that the Guardian referred to. So we are gonna almost wrap up the inner part, the development of the inner part of inner life of the individual and the community. And then we will have the big bulk of what we are going to study today is how that is going to prepare us to overcome and resist all the trials and tribulations and the tests that will befall us. So this is kind of a little bit of a transition into that part. So this slide talks about the, yes.
Roya, before we go on, I just want to mention why I really elaborated on part in this section on trials, tribulations, tests, and sufferings. Because in paragraph 62, it's just mentioned very cursorily that we, as the American Baha'i community, will go through tests and trials. But I wanted to elaborate because there's so much in our writings about tests, trials, and tribulations. What is their purpose? What is their role? Why do we have suffering? So I wanted to explore that. And so it's a very interesting topic. So I added that to part 60. Excellent. Please. Sorry, Roja.
No, please, anytime. So this is, some of these slides are new to me because Sandra had added, so I'll just read this one. The true character of a man is not defined by what he does in front of the crowd, but instead by what he does when no one else is around. And of course, this is the point that Dr. Bayat made 2 weeks ago, as to that is indeed a true essence of what the character of an individual is, as how we behave in our private. So slide 39 is gonna talk about some of the writings of the Guardian in regards to how important this application of the principles of Baha'u'llah into our daily lives, what role it plays and how of utmost importance it is. So if I could have Deborah, would you be able to read this slide for us, please? Thank you.
Yes. A letter written on behalf of the beloved Guardian, dated 12 December 1942, highlights various aspects of the revelation of Baha'u'llah that affect the inner life of the individual. The teachings of Baha'u'llah are so great and deal with so many aspects of both the inner life of man and his communal life that it takes years to really plumb them to the depths. He has brought spiritual food for the soul of the individual to help each one to find himself and become a finer and better developed personality. And also he has brought the laws and principles needed to enable all men to live in harmony together in a great united world. The Guardian hopes you, together with, will do all in your power to help the believers to understand both aspects of the teachings and to develop both as individuals and as a community, an ever higher, finer way of life.
Beautiful, beautiful letter from the Guardian. And it's so clear as to how, again, he's trying to make the friends understand how important this aspect of the transformation of the inner life of the individual and the community is. And I love the part in which he says, you know, for us, that it takes a long time for us to really understand the depths of this, you know, the years to really plumb them in its, you know, understand its depths. And then it says how to help each individual to find himself and become a finer and better developed personality. How, you know, we are all unique in our creation, all noble, but all unique. And how applying these principles, we're all going to bring into this tapestry our own individual beauties and gifts and talents, so that we could become, by this application of the teachings of Baha'u'llah, the best form of ourselves. And
Excellent points, Roya John. This is in this extract, we see that we have this process is a lifelong process. You know, when the beloved guardian saying, you know, it takes years to really plumb to the depth. It's a lifelong process. And then on top of it, this is a very interesting extract at the very end. It says the guardian hopes you, together with, will do all in your power to help the believers. So it says you will. So first of all, you are doing this transformation, and then together with the believers to understand both the aspects of the teachings and develop both as individuals and as a community. What is that process called right now? It's accompaniment, right? That's what we're doing. So the beloved guardian was stressing this during his ministry of accompaniment. So going through this process of transformation of the inner life of the individual, then walking this path of service together. So this is really that the beloved guardian is saying, work to build this community, vibrant community life that he's stressing here. And so you can see how this is one unfolding organic faith. You know, it's very beautiful. Excellent, Roja. Please carry on.
Thank you. The next slide, if we could go, Sandra. Thank you so much. Mary McGregor, dearest Mary, would you be able to read this one for us, please?
Okay. A letter written on behalf of the beloved guardian, dated 20 November 1955, states that Baha'u'llah's teachings will establish a universal consciousness and a universal way of life. The teachings of Baha'u'llah will establish a new way of life for humanity. Those who are Baha'is must endeavor to establish this way of life just as rapidly as possible. Now that the hour has arrived when the Baha'i faith is gaining prominence and is being viewed and reviewed by so many peoples, it is necessary that the adherents of the faith should live up to the high ideals of the faith in every way. In this way, they can demonstrate that the Baha'i faith does create a new way of life, which brings to the individual a complete association with the will of God, and thus the establishment of a peaceful and universal society. Divisional attachments are of man, while universal service is of God. The guardian is now anxious that all the friends achieve a universal consciousness and a universal way of life. From a letter written on behalf of Shoghi Effendi, November 20th, 1955.
Beautiful letter. And this is a letter kind of towards the end of the Guardians, 1955. And again, he is emphasizing that, earlier in last week in one of the slides, we said that the reason the manifestations of God appear and bring teachings is for the application of those teachings in our lives and the transformation it creates for us. So here again, the Guardian is saying, that for us to, as quickly as we can, to apply the teachings of Baha'u'llah in our lives and to create this new way of life that Baha'u'llah has brought and God has envisioned for us. And so at the end, he says that the Guardian is now anxious that all the friends achieve this universal consciousness and this universal way of life. And I think another reference is of the importance of transformation is if we do not study and delve into understanding the holy writings and what Baha'u'llah has brought for us, and if we do not apply it, then how could we represent the faith in a true light that Baha'u'llah has brought? Because we each of us in a community at large, we are representing the faith. And so our way of life, our way of being affects that. So how important it is that we are having clarity of vision, and we understand clearly what our role is, what Baha'u'llah has asked us, how to be, and to be that, and to live in accordance to that every day, and present this new way of life that Baha'u'llah has brought to the world. So this is in essence what this letter is saying. I don't know, Sandra, if you have any additional comments you would like to make.
You're doing beautiful, Roya John. The last sentence, just the Guardian is anxious that we do this, anxious. He's waiting for us to do it, right? He is anxious.
Yes.
This is a new way of life. I mean, how many times have we read, going through this Advent of Divine Justice and the writings of the Guardian, new race of man, new, this is, so we have to be new, every aspect. We have to embody new. So as dear Roya John says, what is new? And we have to read the writings. And so we know what is the prescription for this day and age. So we have a hand, I believe it's from Dennis McGregor. You're up.
Yes. Just that last sentence. Yeah, the universal consciousness and the universal way of life. So you're living that, you're not just the consciousness, but living that universal way of life. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if y'all remember if anybody got to see all those letters that National and the House of Justice released back to back that we were encouraged to study. I remember the last letter they sent to the people of the I Conference. They were talking about the oneness mankind, that we still have a long ways to go with that as American community, we still have a naive understanding of what that really means. And so I think it's beautiful, just try to strive to get to the best we can, but it's not just what does a oneness of mankind look like? What does a oneness of mankind feel like? Not just look like, not just an appearance. And how do we get there? So, and we got the process laid out for us. So that's beautiful.
Yes.
I want to segue 2 seconds, Roya John, on this point that dear Dennis made, as they say, a cogwheel in my head move. But something that I was thinking about is that, because he was mentioning the People of the Eye conference and the letter, all of these documents are so important to be studied. And it's not just like, oh, that came out in July 2020. That was a great document. That was for July 2020, that pivotal document on racism, in the sense of it's written by Universal House of Justice. That is a pivotal document, should be studied over and over. And then the letter that came from the National Spiritual Assembly, Forging a New Path, that is a document that should be studied over. My point is, these documents, if you're ever serving on an institution, you should gather the institution members, the LSA should study these documents together and then formulate plans of action as institutions. And then there's another interesting thing, because at every space, you remember we read this, every space should be, the watchword is freedom from prejudice. Every space, right? That was from paragraph 32, if I believe. I'm not a scholar on Advent Divine Justice, but I think it was around the 30s. But it was every space. So if you're on an institution, if you're in an auxiliary board, if you're, wherever, the watchword is freedom from prejudice. So that is something that, if you're serving on an assembly, how can that space become freedom from prejudice? Then work on it in the sense of, do you have a committee to work on freedom from prejudices that the institution of the spiritual assembly is overseeing? And then, really, how many, assemblies have committees on racial unity, in this country? These are things that we should be working and striving to be forefront on that issue. So this is something I just wanted to throw out, as they say, and make the friends aware that this is what the beloved guardian is calling us to do. Okay, let us get back into Roya John. She was doing such an excellent job. Moving on.
In reality, we the foundation of how we live our lives is based on how well we study and comprehend the teachings of Baha'u'llah. So it's one is dependent on the other. So and the reason, even I think as a law where Baha'u'llah has asked the friends to study the holy writings morning and evening, is for this mere reason of continuing the understanding and the learning of how to be, because we discussed that last week, that we are not interested in just of building congregations, but really no transformation and no change in life, this universal way of life that we're talking about. So if the transformation is 100% dependent on this study, then we need to make sure that study on an individual level happens. So then that way, by each of us living the life, we can inspire other members of the community to also be inspired to live the life as well, and make that communal transformation.
And one last thing, Roy John, I want to share this. This letter, Advent of Divine Justice, by the early Baha'is would call it their Bible, they called it their manual for going out on, when they go pioneering, they called it their manual. Right out, because this was 1938, and then prior was the Tablets of the Divine Plan. But this really broke it down, as they say, how to do it. So as we, dear Roy John, I mentioned, we first had these three weapons, which are the spiritual prerequisites. We went through them: rectitude of conduct, chaste and holy life, and freedom from racial prejudices. This entire text, all 124 paragraphs and 77 pages of it, is all, I tell you, it's all about one singular subject, and that is teaching. It's all about teaching. And the reason the beloved guardian, this whole text is about teaching, is because 1937 was the first teaching plan. And he wanted to get this band of Baha'is in the North American Baha'i community off without a hitch. And he was laying it out. He was saying, this is what you got to do. These are the spiritual prerequisites. And then upcoming, we're going to see all the dimensions of teaching. So the whole thing is truly about teaching. Riaz John, you have a hand, please, if ever.
we should be very grateful for Shaykh Effendi because of the use of his language. I mean, the style of his language. His language, of course, the Bab's language was very poetic and literary, sometimes specific. Abdul Baha was very poetic. I mean, Baha'u'llah was poetic. Abdul Baha, very poetic, at times specific. But Shaykh Effendi is extremely specific. And we should be grateful that he uses the English language in its modern form. And the language is so direct and specific. So there is no ambiguity. There is no ambiguity in Shaykh Effendi's. So I feel we should be really grateful for the effort that he put in capturing all the nuances of the English language, and with style and with the most elevated reverence and style, but yet extremely specific. So we are completely like a manual, exactly, a manual, and gives us confidence. That's what I wanted to say. It gives, Shaykh Effendi's writings gives us full confidence in what we believe and what the revelation is all about.
Beautifully said, Riosjan. Beautifully said. Thank you. Roya John, you're up. Befrmai.
We can go to the next slide.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. So here it's referring again that at the end of paragraph 59, the beloved guardian emphasizes that the perfection and wise utilization of the spiritual prerequisites, which are the three weapons that Ehsanjun just referred to, will prepare the community more than other plan or material resource to help bring into operation the world order of Baha'u'llah. So again, here very clearly he's saying that this is the prerequisite, the utmost importance, the acquisition of these weapons. And I think we referred to it last time also that there are three weapons. It's not one or two, it's three. So as we are embarking upon each one of them, we need to remember the other parts, the other weapons that, like with the chaste and holy life, the temperance, the decency, and Sanjay was referring to how the Advent is really all this letter about teaching, and we all know that our lives need to be very cohesive to how we teach. That means how we live our lives by our actions, by our daily doings is how we are teaching people. We can't tell them the teachings of Baha'u'llah and yet they don't see those exhibited in our lives or in our personality or character. So the cohesiveness of our lives and what we say in order to teach should be very much aligned with each other. So we can go to the next slide.
I think before we go further, may I have to say something?
Please, Tesfaya.
Okay. The way I see last week slides and today also, I come across that the word spiritual transformation that the guardian is saying over and over. And now I see that in the right-hand side, the quotations that spiritual growth and transformation. But is it spiritual transformation is to be the beginning of the spiritual journey, or because we have the spiritual stages have so many, like spiritual maturity, spiritual growth, spiritual intelligence, spiritual dimensions, and there are so many of them. And then is there any limit for this transformation for human being?
Great questions again, dear Tesfaya.
I think the way I see as, and Abdu'l Baha refers to that the reality of man is the state of our thoughts, it's the state of our spirit, and not the physical material state in which we all have. So when we talk about spiritual transformation, it's the acquisition of all of these godly virtues that we are referring to, that we need to develop. And it takes effort, individual effort and consciousness in order for us to work towards its development. It is not something that is just automatically going to happen because we assume a title or we accept a set of teachings. We need to work at it. It takes effort, and I think that's and that is our reality. Is the reason for our creation, to develop these qualities and then to use those qualities in service to humanity. This is really the mere cause of our existence, and I think its perfection and development will probably carry on till the end of our lives. This journey, hopefully, towards perfection of our spiritual qualities. And I don't know, Sandra, if you would like to add to Tesfaya's question.
So that means is to be proclaiming the faith is not enough. We have to do more.
Very true. Yes, absolutely, dear Tesfaya. Teaching the faith is just one of the 6 things that we must do. It's one of the 6 things that we must do. And if you want to know what the 6 things, I'll send it out in an email later. But teaching the faith is actually the most truly is, the beloved guardian, His Holiness Abdul Baha'u'llah. It's in Kitab Akhtas. It is the most important duty in this age is to teach the cause. But it's not enough, because you cannot teach the cause, as we are seeing, unless you not have these spiritual prerequisites. You have to prepare yourself. You cannot open your mouth, if you are not sanctified, if you're not prepared. It's like you're going into a war, but you're not trained for the war. So how can you go into battle? You have to, that's why we talked about the armor of God in one of the slides. You have to prepare yourself. And so this is about preparation. That's why they're called spiritual prerequisites. But teaching is the ultimate goal, because it's the greatest duty that we could have been blessed and given in this day and age, is to teach this cause. And so, but we have to prepare ourselves for that most great duty. So that's really what this entire life is about. But the most beautiful things is teaching doesn't even end in this world, this physical world. This is in the writings of Baha'u'llah. It says teaching is through all the worlds of God. Once you recognize the supreme manifestation of God in this day and age, your soul is at a different position. There's in the writings of Baha'u'llah, it says there's no rank, no station, egress, regress. So it's all, to do with the mind. But you're at a different, just for our own, per se, talking here, just say you're at a different level. But at that different level, you can still teach those who have not recognized the supreme manifestation of God in this day and age. There's still teaching going on through all the worlds of God. And it's something that is in the writings. I can share that and I'll send that to the class, that this is a gift of teaching that continues through all the worlds of God. And it's is the most great blessing that we have that ability to pour our heart, our love out for the manifestation. That's really all I have to say on that. But thank you. Great question, dear Tesfa.
Yes. And I love the picture Sandra has put here as old life, new life, because our belief system and our belief in Baha'u'llah is to apply what he has brought in our daily lives. And so then by applying it, we are creating this new life. And, that the people in the future will recognize Baha'is and the Baha'i community not by name, but by our conduct, by the way we carry ourselves. So if we are not working very hard to transform, then we are not going to represent and do justice to what Baha'u'llah has brought for us. We need to exhibit those qualities. So we can't tell other people about the qualities that we yet don't possess ourselves, and we don't even work towards possessing them. So I think that is the lesson that we need to focus on.
Like, we should be known for our integrity. We should be known for our honesty, our trustworthiness, our truthfulness. Like all the ones that we talked about in rectitude of conduct, as Baha'is, those should be our standard. And that's what the whole society should say. There's something different about that guy or that lady. There's something, I can't put my hand on it. And that's when you could open your mouth and say, I am a Baha'i. And then the words, have meaning because they can connect to your actions. And they say, because your actions should be how to teach the faith, because words are per se cheap in this day and age. It says, let your deeds be your adorning.
Exactly.
Right?
Absolutely. We can go to the next slide, Sandra.
Did we read this one?
Yes, we. Did we?
No, I don't think we did read it.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, we read it. We read it. You're right.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. So now, friends, we are embarking upon tests and tribulations. We did quite a bit of a study on how we need to work on our transformation individually and as a community so that we could resist what is to befall us as a Baha'i community. And now we are going to learn specifically, Guardian is going to tell us what type of tests and tribulations will befall us. And so we don't have to be confused about it. We just need to be prepared for it. So if we could have Gabrielle, dear Gabrielle, would you be able to read this slide for us?
You always give me the ones most appropriate for me.
Oh.
Tribulations and tests. In paragraph 60, the beloved Guardian described the tribulations and tests that the American Baha'is would experience in conducting the twofold crusade against the evils within and without of the community of believers. The nature of the turmoil and persecutions described by Shoghi Effendi is intellectual and psychological, rather than the persecutions that were sorely afflicted on the Persian Baha'is in the cradle of the faith. These things I have spoken to you, so that in me you may have peace. In the world you have tribulation, but take courage, I have overcome the world. John 13:33.
So this is like the beginning of how the Guardian is telling us that our tests are going to be different than the ones that the friends in the East or in Iran suffered. That ours would be intellectual and psychological. And he's going to explain further in detail what they look like, because our clear understanding of those would prepare us as to how to overcome and resist them. Thank you. Now, this is from Abdul Baha. If I could have Dennis, dear Dennis, would you be able to read this one?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
In a tablet addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Howard McNutt, Abdu'l-Baha, while generalizing about the susceptibility of the Baha'is in Persia, none of whom recanted their faith even under torture. In brief, my purpose is to show that whatever call is raised or proclaimed in America, a group would doubtless gather around it. While, on the other hand, the Oriental friends, Baha'is, are firm like unto the immovable mountains. For 30 years had the violators striven to undermine the cause. They have failed even to attract to their side their own kindred and relatives. That is why, undoubtedly, in Persia, 20,000 Baha'is have been martyred, and severe tests have been brought about. Yet, praise be to God, not even a single soul among the friends wavered,
That's
immovable.
immovable. Another beautiful writing and from the talk of Abdul Baha, the tablet that was addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Howard McNutt as to how our understanding will help us to overcome, but that the nature, it's explaining how really the nature of the tests and tribulations of the friends, Oriental friends, or in the East, were primarily physical torture, martyrdom, mental too, but they suffered tremendous tribulations physically as well, and this talks about that.
In paragraph 16, Roya John, we would go back. Paragraph 16, this was the paragraph that was a long presentation, and this was all covering the early American Baha'is and the history of the early American Baha'is. And in that section, in paragraph 16, the beloved guardian talked about the tests, the trials, the tribulations that the early American Baha'is went through. And one of them was the famous defections that went on at that point in time from Ibrahim Khairullah. And we went through all that section before. And so this is talking about this psychological type of tests that the Baha'is had to go through. And as you recall, in that section when we're covering paragraph 16, that even half the numbers of the American Baha'is at that point in time left the faith. And that was an incredible, so this was written even around that time when Abdul Baha was seeing what was happening with that, seeing how the friends were wavering, in their faith. And so he said, the Oriental friends, the friends from Iran, going through mass persecution and suffering, remained immovable as a mountain. And he's writing to the Americans and saying, do not vacillate, do not be immovable as the mountains, like how these Persian friends were. Okay, so that's what in reference.
Thank you, Esandra. If you're okay with it, we can go to the next. Okay. So again, here Shoghi Effendi re-emphasizes the effects of the sufferings that we face. As long as there will be life on earth, there will be also suffering in various forms and degrees. Suffering is both a reminder and a guide. It stimulates us better to adapt ourselves to our environmental conditions, and thus leads the way to self-improvement. In every suffering, one can find meaning and wisdom. And of course, we all know that Abdul Baha on many, many occasions has referenced how these sufferings build and expand the capacity of our soul, and it makes us stronger, and it makes our vision keener, and that we cannot get to those levels of enlightenment spiritually if we don't go through these sufferings. So in a way, in one of the letters, Abdul Baha was saying, I love you so much, and I'm so happy that you're going through sufferings. And he's trying to make a point that he's happy because of the learning and the growth that will come from the sufferings. And he explains it so lovingly like that. So as a younger Baha'i, I must say, at times I thought, why is some suffer more than others? Mm-hmm. And then I felt that those that didn't suffer were luckier. And now as an older Baha'i, I realize that the lucky ones are the ones that suffer, because it purifies their soul and expands their spiritual capacity. And so if we understand that, then we kind of embrace some of the tests and tribulations that befall us with a clear understanding of the growth that will come from it. We can move on to the next slide.
Give one anecdote, 2 seconds, 2 seconds. Dear testifier, just give me 2 seconds. I just want to share this anecdote. When we come into this world at a young age, we're very much like a lump of iron. There's no form, there's no shape, but it has great potential, great capacities. This world, and how we go through it, either molds us or shapes us based upon how we go through it. And the sufferings is like the heat and the pounding. And eventually that suffering and that heat and that pounding, which is the sufferings, will eventually turn that the lump of iron into steel. And then they're going through education turns that steel into refined, making it into something like a sharpened blade. So it's something that how you go through the school of life. Oh, are you going to stay as a hard, cold piece of iron, or just avoiding every potential suffering? Because as dear Roya John said, suffering is about the maturation of the soul. And it gives us new eyes, new insights, new experiences and wisdoms that we can understand reality. Excellent. Dear Tesfaye, I apologize. You unmuted yourself, please.
You know what I just want to say is because when you bring these tribulations and taste, these tribulations and tests and difficulties or problems is to be not for every one of us, because some of us, we are not strong enough to come and resist, to face the difficulties and the tribulations and everything. They just run away from the faith and everything. According to the hidden words that Baha'u'llah saying, my love is my stronghold. He that enters therein is safe and secure. He that turneth away shall surely stray and perish. So these tribulations and tests are filtering each Baha'is how we are stronghold on the faith and to overcome all these difficulties, and then we keep moving forward and then to promote the faith. Because Baha'u'llah himself is showing us how to overcome all these tests and difficulties, but he has the capacity, to show us. That's why he's been suffering the whole life. But we Baha'is, we need to learn from that and then get strength to overcome all these tribulations and tests and difficulties and everything, because this world is not a perfect.
Yes.
Great point, dear Tesfaye. Great point.
Yes, and the tools that will sustain us to overcome these tests and tribulations is following the guidance and the laws and ordinances and teachings of Baha'u'llah. That is our armor. That is what will protect us and sustain us. And so that's why the importance of understanding what our weapons are and to develop them is of utmost importance. Thank you, dear Tesfaye. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide, Sanjan.
Before we move, we have Jenny and then Paria John has hands. Sorry, Roya John.
Sure.
Jenny, you're first, please.
Oh, well, thank you. I just, this has really been bringing a lot of some of my favorite writings of the faith. And I don't know if it's okay to share one because it seems very important.
Of course.
Please.
Oh, okay. So this is from Abdul Baha on spiritual development. So it says, the more difficulties one sees in the world, the more perfect one becomes. The more you plow and dig the ground, the more fertile it becomes. The more you put the gold in the fire, the purer it becomes. The more you sharpen the steel by grinding, the better it cuts. Therefore, the more sorrows one sees, the more perfect one becomes. That is why, in all times, the prophets of God have had tribulations and difficulties to withstand. The more often the captain of a ship is in the tempest and difficult sailing, the greater his knowledge becomes. Therefore, I am happy that you have had great tribulations and difficulties. For this, I am very happy that you have had many sorrows. Strange it is that I love you, and still I am happy that you have sorrows. So
This
just
is
thought
the
I'd share.
exact quotation I was referring to when I said Abdul Baha was saying, I'm happy that you are suffering. And he was trying to explain his love through this beautiful quotation. Thank you, Jenny.
Awesome, beautiful. And then Pariajan, you had a hand, please.
No, my apologies. It was accidental. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Moving on, dear Royajan.
Wonderful. The next slide, Sanjun. Okay. If we could have Miss Luan, would you be able to read this one for us, please?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you.
Tribulations and tests. In this day, everyone must be tested, as the time of the chosen ones to prove their worth is indeed very short. The day of attainment is drawing to a close for them. The first fruits must be ripened in spirit, mellowed in love, and consumed by their self-sacrifice and severance. None other are acceptable at first fruits. And all who fail to attain to the standard through the test are relegated to the many who are called. For many are called, but few are chosen. Matthew 22:14. And these are the words of Abdul Baha in answer to questions asked by Dr. Edward C. Getzinger during a few brief meetings in Haifa, January 26th to February 5th, 1950, and recorded by Dr. Getzinger at the time Star of the West, Volume 6, Number 6, June 24, 1915.
Thank you so much, dear Luan. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so here again, Abdul Baha is talking about what the first fruits are. What are those? What is the spirit in which that will be attained by the friends? Is ripened in spirit, mellowed in love, and consumed by their self-sacrifice and severance. Severance from the world, from the material, physical, totally devoted to God and Baha'u'llah and to the mission that is ahead for them. Those are the conditions of the friends that would attain to be part of those chosen ones, the first fruits. And I think in history, we are so lucky. I often think in this formative age that we live, that we are still at a time and with an opportunity that there are people that still have not heard the message of Baha'u'llah. And we have the bounty and the privilege to share that with them. And these are the times that we need to seize. And these are the times that we need to ripen our spirit. We need to mature. And like the Guardian was saying, to do it quickly, as time is of the essence, the time is short. And then with utmost love self-sacrifice and severance to do the holy task that is in front of us. And so this is those that can attain it, and those that do not develop it will not be able to withstand the tribulations. And now we are going to read a little bit about the physical tests that took place in the East. And if I could have Jenny Jun, if you could read this slide for us, please.
May I say something before you go?
Please, Tesfaya, please.
Yeah, you know, when you, since we are become Baha'i and the Baha'i faith has been like almost 200 years, a lot of people, they heard about the faith and then the faith is growing everywhere. But the only thing is, you know, the people come to the faith is only the one that is to be open the door for them, like we become Baha'i, not for everybody. But otherwise, a lot of people, you know, they come and try and hear over and over and over. Some of them, they don't have open heart and open mind. They can't get it. So this is a blessing for being Baha'i and get to this journey.
Very true, dear Tesfai, very true.
Thank you, Tesfaya.
Thank you.
May I read then?
Please, Jenny.
The Baha'i community is very familiar with the nature of physical tests. The Persian Baha'is have been subjected to physical tests since the time of the Bab. Enemies of the faith, determined to stop the progress of the faith and its numerical expansion, have used physical means to intimidate the followers of Baha'u'llah, to force them to abandon practicing their religion or to convince them to recant their faith. Despite being the victims of numerous physical trials and tribulations, Persian Baha'is have remained firm in their belief. Their possessions have been confiscated. They have been arrested and jailed. They have been beaten by mobs. As many as 20,000 followers have been killed because they would not recant their faith.
Thank you, Jenny Jo. And of course, this is an indication of how, you know, people that, you know, with their limited understanding thought that if they persecute and do public executions and tortures, that they could stop the growth of the faith. And we know clearly that the light that that God has set, you know, will not diminish by the actions of these individuals, and that, you know, the plan of God will unfold regardless. So these are examples, you know, some of the photos, some are drawings, and some are actual photos of the early believers of the faith in the East and how much they suffered with persecutions and executions and torture, but did not waver and were did not recant and endured all of them and embraced martyrdom. Here, continuing of physical tests, since 1979, Islamic revolution in Iran, the physical persecution of the Baha'is has become systematic and built into government policies and laws. During the first decade after the revolution, more than 200 Baha'is were murdered or executed, and hundreds were imprisoned and tortured. Physical persecution has been extended to include dismissal from employment, denial of access to education, and other basic human rights. This is still continuing 42 years later, and the Baha'is are still being persecuted, imprisoned, for no crime whatsoever. And we have on the side a picture of the House of the Bab in Shiraz that was destroyed by the Revolutionary Guardsmen in 1979. I remember as a 6-year-old going on pilgrimage to the House of the Bab. And I remember how beautiful and spiritual and powerful that experience was. And of course, below that, we have a picture of the members of the National Spiritual Assembly of Iran, that this National Spiritual Assembly was elected in April of 1980. And in August 21st, 1980, the 9 members of the NSA, along with 2 colleagues, were abducted, banished, and never really the families, of course, they were assumed executed and killed, but really never any information was given as to what happened to these precious souls that were serving. And the gentleman on the back row, second from the left, the younger gentleman, Dr. Kambi Sadeghzadeh Milani, was in the same Baha'i community as me before I left Iran in 1978 or 79. And he was newly elected to this National Spiritual Assembly on April of 1980. And just a few months later, he was abducted, and his family lives in the East Coast now, and he has a wonderful children that are rendering tremendous service. So these are the type of immense sacrifices that those friends have endured and offered their lives, their possessions, any form of peace and prosperity, and denial of school, denial of employment, denial of retirement, not recognizing Baha'i marriages. It's just going on and on and on with so many tests and tribulations that have befallen the Baha'is in Iran in the last 42 years.
Hey, Roya, may I ask you one question?
Please.
Yeah, is there any spiritual assembly now in Iran, to your best knowledge, at this moment, in these days?
Dear Tesfaya, in 1980, when this National Spiritual Assembly got abducted, the second National Spiritual Assembly, 1981, that was formed, again, 8 of the members were arrested and executed. And in 1983, because of the persecution of the government and not recognizing the faith, no more formal elections or administrative bodies were formed because of this. And if you remember, several years ago, we had the Yaran, that it was not the 9 members, it was 7, because they were just merely functioning in an administrative way, but no elections of these institutions because of the position of the government of Iran towards the Baha'is.
No, okay, thank you. I just want to know what the present days are going on. Still worse.
Yes, it's still going on. Yes, dear Tesfaya.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Burdens are the foundations of ease, and bitter things the forerunners of pleasure. Rumi. So mental tests, if we could have, Riaz John, would you be able to read this slide for us?
Mental tests. A mental test is different from a physical test in that its main aim is to undermine the faith of the believer and cause doubt in his heart. From the earliest years of his ministry, the beloved guardian referred to the inevitable mental tests that would be experienced by the Baha'is of the West, particularly in North America.
Thank you, Riaz. So here again, we are told by the guardian, these are the type of tests we are having. And of course, we know what the weapons are. Our weapons are rectitude of conduct, chaste and holy life, and elimination of racial prejudice. We need to develop those individually and collectively as a Baha'i community so that we could be prepared for these mental tests that will befall us. It is no if, but it is a matter of when. So we continue with another of Shoghi Effendi's writings. And if I could have Paria, dear Paria, can you read this slide for us?
Yes. In a message sent to the American believers, dated 21st January 1922, Shoghi Effendi stated, "How dearly all the holy leaves cherish that memory of the departed master," as he commented upon the fresh tidings that poured in from that continent, admiring the untiring activity of the friends, the complete subordination of their material interests to those of the cause, the remarkable spread of the movement in their midst, and their staunch firmness in the covenant of Baha'u'llah. It is these encouraging reflections of the Master about his loved ones in America and the tests intellectual rather than physical, which he said he would send to them to purify them and make ever better than before. It is these comments and promises of his that make of the movement in the land such a potential force in the world today. The beloved Master's cable to the friends in that region is a clear indication of the presence of those counteracting forces that may usher in those storms of tests that the Master himself has said will ultimately be for the good of the cause in that land.
Thank you, Paria. So here again, from the Guardian is quoting from what Abdu'l-Baha promised us. He said that he will be sending us these tests in order to purify and elevate and make brighter the states of our spiritual beings, and that how all the sufferings and the tests will ultimately be for the good of the cause in this land, North America. The Abdu'l-Baha, upon departure, and we probably will see it in upcoming slides, that he specifically said that those attacks from the religious ministers and various groups will come. And he said to not fear it, but that to even welcome it, because they will be assisting us in the proclamation and bringing to light the faith of Baha'u'llah and his teachings. So these attacks would really be an assistance into the bringing light to the message of Baha'u'llah in the North American Baha'i community. So we have yes, Tesfaya.
Is this mental test is to be both spiritual and medical, or just only healed by spiritual?
According to the writings of the Guardian, is intellectual, psychological, mental, and not physical. That is from what we are studying here. And we are going to get to it, dear Tesfaya, the guardian is going to explain to us what these mental tests look like. He's going to give us examples.
You're right there,
Okay,
Tesfaye.
thank you.
It's psychological, spiritual, mental, all of those, but
Yes.
not physical in the sense in the North American.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tesfaye. And so the side is trials and tribulations are means of purification. And again, we talked about that, how these are to really, they advance the capacity of our soul and purify us. We can go to the next slide. There you go. Thank you. So here, in another message dated November 14th, 1923, Shoghi Effendi pointed out, and yet how often we seem to forget the clear and repeated warnings of our beloved master, who in particular during the concluding years of his mission on earth, laid stress on the severe mental tests that would inevitably sweep over his loved ones of the West. Tests that would purge, purify, and prepare them for their noble mission in life. So again, here it is. The guardian is saying, you know, how could we forget such a clear, you know, warning that they're telling us, you know, how could we neglect it? How could we not prepare for it? We know that it's coming. And next to it, it says, oh God, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself, Abdul Baha. So these mental tests, if we do not have the solid foundation, if we have not developed it, then without a solid foundation, how firm are we really standing? That is the question. So the more we understand and develop these qualities and weapons, the more prepared we are for the tests and tribulations that will befall us. Okay. If I could have, dearest Donna, would you be able to read this one for us?
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. These trials only test your faith to see whether or not it is strong and pure. Your faith is being tested as fire tests gold and purifies it. And your faith is far more precious to the Lord than pure gold. So if your faith remains strong after being tested, it will bring you much praise and glory and honor on the day of his return. Peter 1:7. O son of being, busy not thyself with this world, but with the fire we test the gold, and with gold we test our servants. Baha'u'llah.
Beautiful hidden word of Baha'u'llah. Again, we test the gold. With fire, we test the gold. And with gold, we test our servants. You know, these are the mirrors of, we need to be focused. We need to have a keen vision of what is the purpose of our being and not be distracted by all the negative forces and various illusions that the world presents to us in the material physical world. So this is again all for our protection and guidance, these wonderful writings. More wonderful quotations. Let me see. Miss Yuda, dearest Miss Yuda, would you like to read these too?
Okay, hold on. Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, ambitions inspired, and success achieved. Helen Keller. A sacrifice to the real must cost, must hurt, and must empty ourselves. Give yourself fully to God. He will use you to accomplish great things on the condition that you believe much more in His love than in your weakness. Mother Teresa of Calcutta.
Thank you so much, dear Yuda. Beautiful. If you recall, last week we talked about, what is that force? The force that makes us capable and confident enough to embark upon this holy task. And we said that it was all this love for God and love for Baha'u'llah that enables us to not pay attention to our own weaknesses and frailties, and to totally rely on Him and embark upon all these tasks that are put in front of us. And this, again, beautifully, coming from Mother Teresa and the life of service and sacrifice that she lived, this is exactly what it is. That if we love Him more than, believe in Him more than we believe in our weakness. It's that power that is a force to our success and accomplishment of these noble goals ahead of us. Abdul Baha says, however afflictive your sufferings may be, stay ye undisturbed, and with perfect confidence in the abounding grace of God, brave ye the tempest of tribulations and fiery ordeals. Another guidance as to not to be dismayed or disturbed by the sufferings, and to have utmost confidence in the grace and bounty of God. When you're going through something hard and wonder where God is, remember the teacher is always quiet during a test. These are very cute slides Sanjun has selected.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that is beautiful. Very powerful, very clear that
Yeah.
the teacher is always quiet during a test. Yes, absolutely.
Most of the time, is it okay? May I say something?
Please testify. Please.
Most of the time, the most important thing is not only accepting the faith or believing the faith, but you have to have a trust and confidence. And you have to move your forward with the speed of trust. If you don't have that, belief by itself is not enough.
Absolutely. Reliance in God is the absolute force for our sustenance. Absolutely, dear Tesfaya. Okay, and the next slide, dear Tesfaya, remember we said that we are going to get into more details of what these tests and tribulations and obstacles look like. This is one of those slides. So if you like to read it, dear Tesfaya, go for it.
Okay. All right, let's see. Tastes, obstacles, and inner life.
Oh, you got muted.
You got muted, dear Tesfaya.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm on the phone, so let me see what I can do.
No, we can hear
here
you.
We go.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Tastes, obstacles, and inner life. In paragraphs 60 and 62, Shoghi Effendi states that in conducting the Twofold crusade, the American will encounter steel resistance and suffer many setbacks, which should be resisted. They include storms of abuse and ridicule, campaigns of condemnation and misrepresentation, an assault on their faith, defamation, Sorry, there's something come on here. Defamation of its covers. I can't see it. Okay. Oh,
Would you like me to read the rest for you, dear Tesfaya?
yeah, please. I am lost here now.
Sure. Defamation of their aims, derision toward their aspirations, scorn of their institutions, undermining of their authority, resignation from the faith by a few. So these are some of the setbacks and the types of tests and obstacles and tribulations that will befall the North American Baha'i community. So if we know them, and if we develop the weapons, then we are perfectly ready for when they come. We have the strength and the understanding to resist them, and that we are also prepared to perform the twofold crusade that the Guardian has given us, that task of then embarking upon the community in North America and aiding them in overcoming all the ailments and challenges and issues that they suffer from. So then these are in some example what to expect.
Oh, Gabriel Maguire, you have a hand, please.
I just wanted to talk about those tests. They can come as part of a community or an LSA, or they can also come to an individual, and you can have this huge storm, but nobody knows you're having it. It's a very personal thing, and sometimes that's harder because you don't get any support or anything. It's almost like it's just swirling around in your own head. Just thought I'd add that for you. Thank you.
Excellent point.
Absolutely.
Often we ourselves as Baha'is are the tests on each other. And it's not even coming from the outside world in the sense of it's our own obstacles that we make on ourselves in the sense of our own prejudices, our own thoughts, our own, and those become obstacles. It's our own understanding of the plan. It's our own understanding of what is asked of us, where we are. And so those become our own setbacks by creating problems for other Baha'is often. And those become often why the faith isn't moving by leaps and bounds, because these become the mental resistance that we are creating for ourselves, and then it translates to families and then communities, and as they see, so we create our own mental roadblocks to progress.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we need to be very clear in the understanding of what Baha'u'llah has brought as principles for us to follow, and to live it to the best of our ability. Those are our protective measures to overcome these types of obstacles and tests. And I think sometimes like Ehsan said, if we become, if we experience tests even within the community of the faith, amongst the Baha'is, is because we are not following the laws and ordinances and teachings of Baha'u'llah. We are not reading the holy writings. We are not applying it to our lives. We are not living the life. We are just assuming titles. And this is where those then can become tests within the community.
To say one thing, as a Baha'i community in America, I'll speak about America, not we really haven't experienced tests apart from the early days when the Baha'i community was really growing. I'm talking about from the outside forces. And one case I can explain was in Kenosha, Wisconsin, when in the early days of when that community was really flourishing. As you recall, in part 16, we had as many slides. That was one of the first Baha'i communities. This is a community where Ibrahim Khairallah visited, Abdul Baha visited, and it's a community that really was flourishing. What was interesting was it reached a certain point that there were so many Baha'is that it started receiving attacks from the outside community. And so the ministers and the priests actually got on and started writing articles in the Kenosha newspapers to publicly attack the faith in Kenosha, because it reached a certain point of emergence out of obscurity. We're not at that level in most communities in this country. And so we have, as they say, so many issues already within our community that we have to reach that point. Once we reach that point where we get out, the wider community will start saying, oh, this is a threat. And we're going to then start seeing these other things. Assaults on the faith in words, as the beloved guardian Abdul Baha says, they will be voicing it from the pulpits, and so the derision, the attacks, and will start all coming, undermining the authority of the institutions, and so these things will come in the future. But now we still have, as they say, issues to deal with. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. So here again, the Baha'i community will be called upon to fight one of its fiercest battles to overcome resistance of the faith. If the Baha'i community is fully cleansed from the defilements it tries to remove, then the result will be a transformation and a complete reversal of attitude of the enemies of the faith. So these were the same defilements we talked about. When the guardian gave us the three weapons that said, please perfect those, and its utilization, wise utilization, is because of this. Because if we do not possess, if we ourselves have defilements, then we cannot even embark on the second part of the twofold crusade to try to remove these defilements from society at large if we possess it ourselves. So here again, it's saying that we need to be fully cleansed from those defilements ourselves so that we could do the second part of the double crusade, and then will we have the reversal of attitude of the enemies of the faith. We will prove with action how the Baha'i standard is and what this new world order that Baha'u'llah has brought looks like. But we need to work diligently to remove these defilements and equip ourselves with the weapons prior to the second part of the twofold crusade. Okay.
Excellent.
Next slide.
Okay, next time we'll get into some more slides. The hour is 8:30. I apologize.
Okay.
And excellent, really wonderful. So enjoyed, Royajan, excellent presentation, hearing you. And so next time we will get into further slides, finishing up on exploring on sufferings and tribulations. And I'm sure if we have time, we will get into part 17.
Yes.
Okay, which we will start exploring the first dimensions of teaching. So Any questions at this point in time?
No, because my phone is not to be good connection, so I missed something. So that's fine.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you, dear Tesfai. Always good to hear you. And thank you, each one of you. And especially thank you, Roya John. Another wonderful presentation and exposition from you to elaborate and help us understand these
oh, thank you,
topics.
Edvanjon, for giving me the opportunity, and thank you everyone for bearing with me, and we all learn and understand together. Thank you so much.
And with that, dear friends, let us have a closing prayer, and then we can close off for this evening. Thank you so much. And again, wishing each one of you a wonderful, joyous, happy Rezvan. And so, and look forward to see you next week as we conclude part 16 together. Thank you.
Can I ask dear Claudia to maybe say the closing prayer?
And don't forget to unmute yourself, Miss Claudia. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanj.
There you go.
Very good point. In the name of our Lord, the most holy, the most great, the most exalted, the most glorious. Glory be to thee, thou who art the Lord of all beings and the ultimate aim of all creation. I testify with the tongue of both mine inner and outer being that thou hast revealed and manifested thyself, that thou hast sent down thy verses and demonstrated thy proofs, and that thou art independent of anyone besides thee and sanctified above all else except thyself. I ask thee, by the glory of thy cause and the power of thy word, graciously to assist them that have risen to discharge what hath been enjoined upon them in thy book, and to perform that whereby the fragrance of thine acceptance may be shed abroad. Thou verily art the powerful, the gracious, the forgiving, the bountiful. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you so much, and wishing you all a wonderful, wonderful, joyous week, and look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good one,
Good
everybody.
night, everyone.
Bye bye.
Good night, all.
Bye-bye.
Have a good time.